Welcome to the show No Instructions, where we meet with founders and interview them about starting and growing their businesses. I'm your host, Chad Ingram, 3-time founder and CEO at Distro. Distro is a platform to help businesses build teams by breaking down borders around the world. Let's go ahead and get started with today's guest and see how they built their business. We've got Josh here today on the show. No Instructions. Welcome.
Thank you. So awesome. Great to be here.
Yeah, super glad to have you. So as we've talked about, in some of the shows, like the purpose of the show is to really help, either employees or early stage founders or those thinking about starting a company, to really hear like what it takes and how long it takes, and some of the early stories about it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we'll talk about today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One of my favorite topics.
Yeah. So, you've got a really cool story, I think. I think everyone who comes on the show has a cool story. But we want to start where it's most relevant. So where do we start? Do we start about your school, or does it, come prior to college?
Well, I mean, school's maybe relevant. I wasn't a great student, so I hated school. I hated even in junior high. That's why I joined choir, because choir had the most field trips. And so anything to get out of school, I skipped like 45 of my days of my last semester of high school. Like I just couldn't do it. And my grade point showed. That's why I went to Western Michigan University. But I grew up in a place where the options that I saw in front of me in life were either to work at the power company like my dad did, work at the prison like other people's dads did in the towns that I grew up, or
what town were you from?
Jackson, Michigan.
Okay.
Which is
small town?
Small town, like 30,000 people.
Kind of small.
Yeah. Once was a lot larger, but companies imploding in the auto industry kind of left it. So it's kind of a shell of a town.
Yeah.
So I could either work at the power company, work at the prison, or become a teacher. And those are the options I saw, or work in restaurants like I was, and I didn't want to do that forever. And the term entrepreneur, that word wasn't used in my hometown. People didn't think about that, talk about that.
At home or in the community?
No. What's crazy, though, is my mom was an entrepreneur, and she didn't know it. We didn't understand it. She did odd jobs. She painted houses. She'd move a sandstone wall for you. She'd show up with her 2 boys, and we'd move a wall and turn that into a waterfall in our backyard, or do things like that. And she had a bunch of houses she cleaned. So
was it because maybe she was bored, or is it because or creative, or did she need to earn money?
Needed to earn money for sure. But she is very creative, an artist, a scavenger of sorts, can turn, nothing into something.
What about your dad?
Dad worked at the power company for 40 years. So he was very much company man, kind of worked up from draftsman to project manager.
Wow.
Within the same company, and retired at 58. So that was one story. I didn't feel like that was for me. So I chose teacher, and I went to school to be a teacher. Wow. And I chose to be a music teacher because I'm a singer and I love singing. And I thought, well, that's perfect. I'll just become a choir teacher.
My dad was a music teacher.
Was he?
Yeah.
What discipline?
Yeah. So he was a drummer.
Okay.
He could play a lot of things, but he was a professional percussionist in Southern California where he grew up. So he used to play for USC for a while.
Oh.
He actually played when I was younger, every once in a while we'd run into something. He'd be like, "Oh, that was me,"
What?
Yeah, he'd played in a few movies as like a drummer in a movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Singing was a passion, so I thought there was a fit. About 4 years into school, I realized I still had 2 years left. Those choir classes only are like a half credit, and
right.
Working full time. I was married early at 20. We were trying to put ourselves through school. I realized I couldn't do it. I hate,
and
like
this
I said,
is back still in Michigan.
This is in Michigan at Western Michigan University. And just realized I just needed out of school, whatever is the fastest track. And so I went to...
Why? Because school didn't fit, or something else called you?
I hated school. Well, a number of factors. Hated school. I realized that music, while it was a great passion, when I was doing it for work or a career, I began to loathe it. I just hated sitting in practice rooms and learning all the things I needed to learn. It was just no fun anymore. It took all the fun out of it. So I just asked a counselor, what's the fastest path out of school? What could I do? And he said, secondary education, geography major, social science minor. So I did that. It still took 2 more years working full time. But I knew in student teaching that was not it. I knew this was not it. And I just couldn't support a family on, $27,000 a year, which is what I made my first year as a teacher.
Wow.
So I taught for a year and realized that wasn't it, and tried to figure out what on earth someone else could do in this world that had this set of skills and this background other than teach. And I found sales is actually a very, very similar skill set aimed at a different goal. And
where was your first sales position?
Sales position was at SBC. So I was on phone lines selling DSL to people who were mad about their bill.
Okay, so for the younger crowd, tell us what DSL is.
DSL, direct subscriber line. It's like early high-speed internet.
I was talking to somebody about this recently, where you actually had to dial in to your to your internet. You had to log into your internet, and then there was a time where you couldn't use your phone while you were on the internet.
Oh no, you screw it up, man.
Yeah,
you got to download that whole picture. It's going to take 5 minutes.
Yes.
So I was selling like early high-speed internet, and I was good at it, and I was like, oh, that's something. So. I made a career in sales, went to SBC, then Pfizer, then Stryker, medical device company and pharma company, and made kind of a career out of being really good at sales. I'd typically become number 1 sales rep within the first year, and then they would ask me to come in-house and do sales training, teach everyone else to.
How did you feel during that time? Like, did you feel like energized by that? Did you feel still like you were barely scratching the itch?
No, I mean, from where I came from, at that time, I felt like I had arrived. Like this was it. I have a career. I'm making 6 figures, dude. What? I'm crushing it. So I was, what I felt like at the peak of the mountain until I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
That book also changed my life.
Didn't it?
Yes.
So for me, coming from where I came from, that was like a revelation. Like, what? We've never talked about money. You can be wealthy if you want to. You can just choose this. You can own a business if you want to. So that book was a huge wake-up call to me and kind of the start of my call to become an entrepreneur. After that, there were several books.
What year was this, would you say?
This was 2002.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2002. And I just became a voracious learner. I had to figure this out. Like, what could I do? Could I start a business? Could I start a company? Could I do this? Could I own one? What would I even do? What kind of business would I start? And it took me 5 years to start my first business, to get up the courage while I was, still working in the corporate world, trying to figure things out.
How old were you with that?
I was
first
27.
business?
I was 32 when I started my first business.
So still somewhat young.
A late bloomer in terms of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I like talking to early 20-year-olds who are having this existential crisis of whether they should sell their company. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, man, if you only knew.
Come on. You got so many at-bats coming. That's great. So for about 5 years there, I was the guy that if you came to my house or if we did anything or went to lunch, there's nothing else we're talking about other than what business we're going to start together.
Interesting.
And I would just hijack every conversation, no matter who it was. We're just like, what could we do? What about this? We could get this started. We could do this. We could do that. And I have still 4 notebooks that I kept during that time of just all my little ideas and logos and the design of this frame and this bed and how I do this. And I just became obsessed with like trying to figure this out. And it was actually my first company was actually an opportunity of scratching my own itch. When I was working in the corporate world, I was building sales training programs to try to replicate what I knew and teach everyone else and get them up to speed quickly. Take someone who was selling copiers yesterday to learn how to sell computer-assisted brain surgery platforms tomorrow, which is what the product in the division I was working in. And that's a hard thing. And we had all of these training courses all around the United States and around the world. We had like 41 different programs a year. I was on a plane like nonstop. I had a bunch of regional trainers that were also working. It was a very expensive and time-consuming proposition. And I thought, there's got to be a way to scale this. And this is around the same time that e-learning was becoming a thing and people were learning on computers and there were courses that you could take. Very early days, the tools that existed today didn't exist back then. And so I started building an e-learning program at Stryker. And
So what for the company you're working for?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, internally.
And I was working with like 5 vendors, a videographer, a 3D animator, a content writer, all of these different vendors trying to pull this thing together. And I thought there should just be a company that does this, that I can hand my binders and our DVDs to, and they could just make them into e-learning, right? Like it's not rocket science, but it takes a lot of time. And so I looked around, I tried to find that company and they didn't exist, especially in the medical space that I was in. There were some companies creating e-learning content, but they didn't have any experience in medical or surgical or anatomy or any of that stuff. So I decided to leave Stryker and just start the company that I wish existed.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So you're at this company and you start seeing a need based on what your experience is, which is kind of funny because it sounds like for a few years, 5 years, you were playing with a myriad of different business ideas, right? What made this so compelling that you actually took action on this as opposed to, I'm sure there were many good ideas before.
Sure. I was actually thinking about this on the drive over here because that was just the business that I felt like was the most likely thing I could build at that time. So at that point, my
most likely to
succeed based upon the skill set I had, the knowledge that I had. There were also water flavoring, even before, those little packets you can put in drinks today. I invented those 20 years ago in a notebook. I don't know who was looking at my notebook. Yeah. But this is way back when Kool-Aid and Country Time just had the big canisters. I'm like, no, there should be individual packets you can put into water bottles.
Genius.
So but how do you even make that? How do you even start that company? But could I turn someone's binders and CDs into e-learning? Well, I don't know, kind of doing it now for myself. Could probably do this for another company. I wonder if another company would buy. So I actually tried to start Maestro on the side.
So it was called Maestro.
Maestro is my first company, yeah.
I see what you did there. You just snuck it in there. Okay, hold on. So as you get into starting Maestro, you're looking at this idea. At what point do you quit your job?
Well, that's what I was getting to. I thought I could just get it going on the side and maybe get some clients and moonlight for a while. But given my travel schedule and how busy I was with my job there at Stryker, I could get 2 hours a week. And I made almost no progress, humiliating progress over a course of 2 months.
Yeah.
So I just, and my wife at the time, she knew that I was essentially going to self-combust, or spontaneously combust into an entrepreneur. It was just going to happen. There was no way it wasn't going to happen. If I've ever felt called to figure something out in my life, it's that, how do you go from employee to entrepreneur? So I kept thinking, if I just had a week, what could I do in a week of just uninterrupted time in building Maestro? I think I could make something happen. So, crazy enough, she believed in me and I believed in my ability enough. And I knew I could get a job at pretty much any medical device company tomorrow if I needed to. So
now you were still in Michigan at
still
this
in
time.
Michigan, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had our dream house on
not
the lake.
Silicon Valley.
No.
Or New York.
No. In
Or Silicon
Kalamazoo,
Slopes.
Michigan.
Okay. All right.
Slightly larger town in Michigan, but still small. So I ended up quitting my job, and that first week, tried to start Maestro.
What did that mean to start Maestro?
I didn't know.
What did that mean?
That's the thing. Literally, that first Monday, I walked in. What do you do? So
I walked in
the Chamber of Commerce. Oh, do I go like visit the chamber? Is this like, did they help me start a business? So I visited the Chamber of Commerce in Kalamazoo, and I'm like, I'm here. I'm
can't
ready
make
to
this
start
stuff up, folks.
And they're like, oh, okay. Well, do you have an LLC? What's an LLC?
Okay, so here's some appreciation for this, because you have, and you're not like a super old dude, but you were starting businesses prior to this sort of like cloud-based era. Yeah. When everything was easily accessible, in like 2011 and on. Now, like back then, it was so much harder to actually start a business. Yeah. Like the logistics of even filing the paperwork with the state, like everything took longer. Today, you could do that in 30 minutes.
Yeah, there's LegalZoom. There's all these opportunities to just get something spun up in the day, get all the tools and subscribe to all the SaaS accounts that you need to get your emails and website set up. Wasn't the case back then.
Right.
We hand coded our first website actually. So so that kind of maybe paints the picture of how naive I was at the time, like walking into the Chamber of Commerce, and but by the end of the week I had figured it out. So during that week I downloaded some free software that was desktop-based software that would allow you to author. It wasn't free. It was like a 1-week free trial, but it was $1,000. So I was like, I could make a couple spine anatomy courses. I know these spine implant manufacturers. There's a couple down in Texas. I'm going to put together some prototypes. I'm going to fly down and meet with them and see if I can do a deal with them.
Okay. So before we talk about those meetings, so this is great. So you're thinking, all right, let me put together what we'd call today our MVP. Yeah. Right. Our basic first version of value. Yep. And hopefully they'll take it. So you're booking flights to go to this place.
Yeah. I may have actually had those booked before. I'm trying to think about logistics. It's fuzzy.
Also great. Naive. That's where naive helps you.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Like I can figure it out.
So, but what amount of fear or nervousness are you feeling at this point? Are you kind of like so naive to where, oh, this is going to work out great?
No, not at all. I mean, no one I knew, literally no one I knew had done this. This was Wild West from my sphere, my circle. Like what I was doing was crazy. And of course my parents were like, what? You're going to quit your 6-figure job and start a company? Oh, look at what so-and-so did and they failed. Look what so-and-so, and oh man, yeah, it's dangerous. So yeah, there was a good amount of fear, but also that fear fed me. It made me very hungry, and when things are like that, when things are primal, you tend to fight. And so that's what I did. That's the bravery of getting on a plane with some crappy spine anatomy training modules and thinking you're going to sell this to Abbott Spine or Tournier or whoever. I went down to visit.
Now, before you talk about those sales meetings, are you alone at this point? Yeah. Or have you recruited anyone else?
No. Alone. Totally alone. Because I don't even know who to recruit. Honestly, I don't know who my first hire would be. And at this time, really, like the next peak for me, and this was a huge question when I was starting, which was, could I even pay myself? Could I even build a business that I could like pay myself a salary or make a profit from? And then second to that, could I hire someone? How do you even hire someone? What do you need to do? Could I make enough that I could afford another person? I couldn't even imagine that. So those were kind of the two big unknowns that I had to figure out at that time. So I wasn't even to that step yet, but I quickly was.
So you go to the sales meeting.
Yeah, I go to these sales meetings and they say yes.
stop?
Two of them say yes.
Wow.
So,
like this early on or after 100 meetings?
No, like in the first meeting, I just showed him what we had. And he's like, just Abbott Spine, for example. And I had this unique ability because I had been a sales training manager at a medical device company. I was selling to a sales training manager at a medical device company. I could just point and poke at their pain. Like I knew they were feeling the same things I was feeling. Is like, what we're doing is not scalable. How do we digitize what we're doing and create something more scalable that we can share with people all around the world?
Was there a lot of friction at the time? Because, I mean, this would have been kind of innovative back then.
Yeah.
Right.
There were LMSs back then, early crufty LMSs. And there were early like SCORM-based e-learning courses that you could build, and a couple of builders that were out at this time. This is 2007. So the tools had been established to allow me to do what I was doing and have a degree of confidence that I could figure out how to build these things once they ordered them.
Right.
So
then how did you start building?
Well,
so you got these orders, you go back home.
I got like Abbott Spine said, well, I want 9 courses. How much is that? And I was not prepared for that
to
question.
even give him a price.
I don't know.
Man.
It just came off the top of my head. I said, about 10K each. So like 90K. And hit the mic there.
Oh, you're good.
And he was like, deal. Let's make it happen.
Seriously.
So I'm like, $90,000. And whoa, I've got to make these.
So
things.
who do you celebrate with?
Well, my wife.
What'd she say?
Unreal. I mean, she's the, I don't know where her confidence comes from in me. Maybe it's because I've not let her down, but she just believes I can do anything that I say I'm going to do.
It's awesome.
Which I don't always do, but yeah, she's my greatest champion. And I think that's probably an overlooked part of the entrepreneurship journey is you have to have a spouse or partner that is in lockstep with you. You have to be aligned. I've talked to so many founders that they're not on the same page. And it's always toxic. And
it's a challenge. I attribute so much of the same to my wife, who is low key when I'm not. She knows how to kind of balance me out. And, I'll tease her about this or that, but like it's pretty awesome. Yeah. And I've seen, it's kind of weird. I have this weird quirk, and I think I confuse people when I'm interviewing people to join like my executive team or when I'm talking with other founders, and I'll often ask like, well, what does your wife think? Or what does your spouse think? And it's really interesting what you get. And I think they get confused at why you ask, but for us that have been through it, like there's a major sacrifice going on there as well, and they have to be bought into that.
That's right.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's even true. You said with leadership team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be on the same page. Luckily she was, and believed in me.
Awesome.
So
then what was the next step? So at what point
figure out how to build 9 e-learning courses for Abbott and 3 e-learning courses for Tournier.
So who helped you build that? Did you go try to find a programmer?
I didn't know what I needed. I knew I didn't need a programmer right away because there was this off-the-shelf e-learning authoring tool set that, if you knew how to use PowerPoint, you can basically build an e-learning course. So, like my first attempt at a contract hire was like I hired a transplant surgeon to write content for me, a Mexican transplant surgeon who English was his second language. Great guy, but
no Chat GPT back then. Okay.
So the stuff he made was so overdone and so complex, and it just didn't work. I couldn't get him to like dumb it down. So then I tried to hire a teacher of my friend to write this stuff. He couldn't pull it off. And so I ended up writing the stuff, and I recruited a designer friend of mine that also worked at Stryker to make them look good and
Sure.
create the UX of these courses. And so worked together to get that going. He ended up coming onto the company as a partner.
So you did eventually have
So I did eventually
teammate.
have a teammate, yeah,
Okay.
and started with a designer. He could code a little bit, but he helped me realize, well, we really need both designers and engineers. We need programmers too, because there's a lot of this stuff we're going to need to make that's custom. Did a lot in Flash back then, like any.
Were you still selling at this point? So like now you pre-sold some stuff, then you go to deliver it. That probably takes a bit. So how are you balancing?
I'm not. You hit me right in in my heart there, because what I realized pretty quickly was I was spending all my time fulfilling, and no, I wasn't selling, because we were trying to get these things out the door so we could get our final payment on these, or I think we did a third like progress billing or something back then. But yeah, we were just trying to move these things out. So for like several months, I was just trying to fulfill on what I said we would do, and wasn't able to kind of go back out and start to sell. And when I did, we got more. And then the same problem kind of, like traffic jam stops and starts.
So it was kind of a little lumpy at first, right?
Yeah. So then one of my next recruits was a co-founder who, was in sales, and she just loved what I was doing and wanted to come in. Today, she owns the company, by the way.
Wow.
Which is very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So still running.
Yeah, but it was like, okay, I think it would be easier for me to hire someone to sell than hire someone to operate and fulfill all of these programs at this point.
So over what period of time do you grow this into where? And I think you ended up exiting that business, right? At some point.
Yeah. We grew it to about $5 million in revenue in 3 years.
That's amazing, especially back then.
Yeah, especially back then. Yeah. At the time, it felt awesome, and we got all kinds of awards. Like at the time, I was like the Elon Musk of Michigan. It seemed,
in Michigan, yeah.
I think we won like Company of the Year or something at some tech awards in Michigan or something like that. Awesome. I don't know, a bunch of cool awards, which was great. So yeah, that was an exciting journey. Lots of different twists and turns along the way.
Yeah.
But
did you end up raising any money for it,
No.
or did you bootstrap that and sort of grow it?
I would have raised money if I could, but there was no money to be had back then. And I'd never heard of angel funding or, any other, convertible debt or any of these things.
Yeah.
And it was a service company, so it wasn't really conducive to those sorts of fundings. We tried to find different debt avenues over time, but a company that's growing that fast, and we really didn't have assets other than computers and nerds. So
totally.
There really wasn't anything to collateralize debt.
So how'd you end up back in Utah, or in Utah? I guess.
So it was actually my second company, which maybe is a worthy aside. So with Maestro, we realized that we were only solving 10% of the problem. Only 10% of what you need to know to do your job do you actually learn from, quote, training. How do you learn the rest? Well, a variety of sources, just observing that phone call, this text, that video that person created, this email, and where is that stuff? It's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's all unstructured or informal learning. And so, after a couple of years of building Maestro, I started to get this idea of creating a learning platform that would allow you to gather all of this unstructured content in a place that was searchable and indexable. And Twitter had just come out.
Like a wiki almost, or something
like a corporate wiki. Today, Gartner and Forrester call the category knowledge management.
Yeah.
But there was no term like that back then. I called it a social learning platform.
Okay. And what year was this?
This is 2009.
Okay.
So a couple of years after we started Maestro. And Maestro was doing well. And I saw the opportunity to build it, and everyone around me at the time was like, oh man, this needs to be done. We've got to figure this out. So the deal we ended up making was Jen, who was my partner in Maestro. I just said, look, if you continue to run Maestro, I'll go build Bloomfire, this company, and I'll just copy and paste cap tables over. So you get a percentage in Bloomfire if we can use Maestro's profits to fund the company.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We used Maestro to kind of fund and bootstrap the company with a couple of employees and engineers, worked with an outsourced dev shop to try to get it built as fast as possible. And when we did, we launched it at South by Southwest in 2010, and started to build a SaaS company, which I knew of 0 people that were doing that in Michigan at the time. There were people
still
doing
in Michigan.
That. Well, still in Michigan, yeah.
Okay.
But this is getting to the question of how did you get to Utah?
Yeah.
I ended up hiring a designer in Utah in 2011, and he was going to work remotely, so I flew out here to meet with him and just kind of like onboard him and get to know him and plug him into the business. And I thought, well, while I'm out there, I'm just going to I've heard the tech scene in Utah is like burgeoning. And I thought,
there would have been Omniture would have sold sometime around there.
Right around there.
A few other things going on.
Actually, one of my visits, Josh James launched Domo while I was out there, and I went to the launch party. But yeah, I sent out 5 or 6 emails, a couple of LinkedIn requests. Just hey, I'd love to meet up. I'm Josh, building Bloomfire. Just love to get plugged into the Utah tech scene.
Yeah.
And I ended up scheduling 25 meetings that week with all kinds of amazing people. Chris Finken, who built Orange Soda.
Yeah.
Mike Moore, who runs Mountain West Ruby Conference. Jeremy Witcherly, who was president of ZenPrint at the time.
Yeah.
And I hired 4 of them that week.
Wow.
And by the end of the week, I had a call with my wife, and I think on Friday I was like, babe, I think we might need to move to Utah.
This is the place.
This is the place. It's happening here. If you gave me 6 months in Michigan and said, hey, line up a bunch of meetings with people who know how to sell and market and build SaaS products, I probably couldn't do it.
Yeah.
If I just had time clear to do it, and here it just happened. And it felt like there was a SaaS sales rep on every corner here, And in
Michigan, though, also, this would have been post, the Great Recession, and the automotive industry is really big there, right? There was probably a lot of people going through hardship there.
Yeah.
In addition.
It was hard times. Still is somewhat hard times. And it is a great place. If you want to build a tier 1 auto supplier or a medical device company or a chemical company, the talent is there in Michigan for that. But SaaS in 2011, not really.
Yeah.
And it's much better now, of course. Everywhere is. But it was happening in Utah. So we decided we were going to sell our dream house on the lake and move to the desert and build a SaaS company.
Yeah.
Whatever it took. This is my first SaaS company, and we were bootstrapped in that we hadn't taken funding, but we were using, our profitable service company to fund our product company. And so, 3 months later, I'd packed everything up, moved out here. And the crazy twist to that story is the very first day in the office in Utah, no correlation to just being in Utah. I got 2 calls. One was an offer on my house, and the other was an offer on my company.
Whoa.
And it was a good offer.
Yeah.
And
this was roughly when? What year?
This is 2011, end of 2011.
Wow.
So
as it began, it ended for you.
Yeah. What do? Do you take both offers? Neither? One?
Take
not
the bird
other?
in the hand.
So I took both and decided we're just going to stay. We had already, kind of cut ties with Michigan and moved everything, and moving back sounded like drudgery. And, I had a call with my co-founder in Maestro, Jen, and after the Bloomfire acquisition, and I was like, well, what now? Do I come back to Michigan?
Right.
Am I your boss? You've been running the company the last 2 years. Am I on the sales team? What do I do? I don't understand how I fit in. And she was like, I got this. I really feel like this is my baby now. And
that's awesome.
And I want to own it. And so
how did you, so you're here, I'm sure you made some contacts and friends, but how did that feel for you going from kind of, we've passed through a lot of years, right? And it's been a work in progress over a long time.
Mm-hmm.
One business sort of helping generate another and growing that. How did that feel once it was just stopped? It was done.
Unreal. unreal. Like seeing, a 7-figure check wired into your personal bank account is like, what? I remember this is a dumb thing, but I remember walking into a store. It wasn't even like a nice store or something, but I was like, I could buy anything in here. And I probably could at other points in my life too. I don't know, but
it's different.
It was a different feeling. And now what do I do? What is my life? Am I done? Do I retire? Do I stop working? These are all big questions we kind of needed to figure out and answer. And, we had some wealth advisors at the time kind of step us through this and figure out our trust and figure out whether we're in wealth accumulation mode or wealth preservation mode, because that's an important decision, and, all of these things.
And you're still young.
Yeah, 36.
Yeah, at the time, you got a lot of fight in you.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe kind of take us through what, where you ended up next and, today even, and how you're thinking about things.
Yeah. So I after selling Bloomfire, I didn't know if I was retired or not, but at least I told our wealth advisor that we're still in wealth accumulation mode. So I'll probably build something else. And I took a year off, and we traveled a bunch, and I goofed around, and I tried my hand at off-road racing.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I did when I sold my business. We didn't talk about off-road racing. Yeah. It's very cool.
When you grow up, just dreaming about it, thinking, I could do that if I could just have an opportunity. I didn't love it as much as you do. And I wasn't as good as
I don't know about that. I crashed in my last race going 80 miles an hour. So apparently I'm bad. But anyway.
I've done that too.
Yeah.
So I ended up building another company called Quizzer after I took a year off and grew that.
That was VC backed too,
That was VC backed company. It actually started as a venture studio. We thought we were going to build a company that built companies. I built a service company, built a product company. I don't want to just build another one. Why don't I build a company that builds companies? And that's great, but until you realize that you face a mother or child decision, especially when you have something that takes off like Quizzer. Quizzer went from,
So Quizzer came out of this sort of like incubation model.
Yeah, Quizzer was like idea number 6 that we tried to validate or build. And we had acquired a little mobile app along the way that had a little following. And Quizzer just took off, like 1 million users within a month, and not the first month, but after we started to figure out that we were a quiz tool for publishers and marketers, and that could help generate leads.
And that competed with, in some ways, maybe with Qualtrics, is that right?
No, not really. It was more allowing everyone to have their own BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed at the time had all these cool quizzes you could take. Which Harry Potter character are you, or what should you be this Halloween, or whatever. And everybody wanted to create those sorts of quizzes, but they didn't want to build the software to allow them to do that. Enter Quizzer. Hey, we built the software to allow you to make these fun quizzes and embed them in your website to generate leads, drive traffic, whatever. And it happened to be that Facebook's algorithm was just pumping these quizzes at the time, like quizzes in everyone's feed in like 2013 and 14.
Yep.
That's about all they saw is like what your spirit animal is, or what your friends, whatever. So we were part of that, and we grew within a year to like a couple 100 million users. So it took off that fast. And what do you do?
Yeah.
When you have I've never seen anything take off that fast.
You have to take care of it.
Do you really say, okay, team, let's build something else? No, you don't say that.
Yeah.
Okay, team, let's spend time on this little mobile app that we bought. No, you go all in on the thing that's working. And so that's why I realized, unless you're so committed to the venture studio that you care more about the mother than the life of a child, like you're going to choose the child every time. So we pushed the venture studio aside. We raised money for Quizzer. I think we raised like 8 million and 2 rounds of capital for Quizzer. Grew that. I stepped aside in 2016 to let the team run it from there. This time I took a couple years off before I started validating my next business, and then that process took 2 years to find my next thing. So it was like a 4-year ramp up to build my next thing, which was Volley, which video messaging app.
A lot of users also.
Yep. We tried to build the Marco Polo for work. Is the best way that people understand or describe it. And so
incredible logo,
killer product, killer
great
logo,
branding.
Great execution. So proud of what we built, but ultimately the market just wasn't ready for it. Due to people's aversion.
Do you think you were late or early?
Early. Yeah. Yeah. For that form of communication, I think once Gen Z is in charge, things will be different. But until they are, if a global pandemic doesn't change people's sentiment on recording videos of themselves to communicate, which most people are averse to, which is a big miss. We didn't see that coming. We thought, oh, look at Marco Polo behavior, look at Snapchat behavior, look at this. But what we didn't realize is those are all in very high trust, low risk situations in conversations. And the opportunity we saw with Volley is to monetize some of those high risk, low trust, like work, school, community. Those are high willingness to pay areas that need a richer form of communication asynchronously. So
you can build a great product.
Yeah.
Honestly, a great product. I used it. Thousands of people here in our neighborhood used it, right? And you can build a great product. You can raise money. You can build a great team, and still it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
And so would you attribute that mostly because maybe the market wasn't ready?
There's a series of challenges. One, the market wasn't ready. Yeah. People just weren't ready to record videos of themselves to communicate. Two, everyone has communication app fatigue. Like download this other app. I want to chat with you on that app. That's akin to, hey, come join my church.
Yeah.
It's really almost that hard to get somebody to download another stupid app.
Yeah. So
those two things were against us from the beginning, even though we had some good traction. Then the tech bubble burst. Sequoia writes their letter, YC writes their letter to everyone, get 24 months of runway, cash is king, do everything you can to cut expenses, et cetera. VCs clutch their money. And we have a cute little free messaging app, so because that's what you do. If you're building a messaging app, that's what Telegram did. That's what Discord did. We were just following the same playbook, build a great app, get a bunch of users, get the network effects going, then monetize the thing down the road.
And you had some network effects for sure.
Yeah, we did, especially here in Utah. It was quite strong, especially in the tech community, which we're really proud of, but not big enough to monetize.
Sure.
So running out of capital, we made some hasty attempts to try to monetize. It just, the berry wasn't big enough to squeeze at that point.
And during that time, were you still fundraising? Despite the market, you were fundraising.
I was monetizing, fundraising, and running a process on the company simultaneously, all three, trying to whatever I could get, because I knew getting was not good. And in any given market over the last 15 years that I've been an entrepreneur, Volley would have been like a 1 week fundraise based on the stats that we had. It would have
especially in 2021.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So it was just a crazy timing issue. And because Volley is a very complex product built on 4 code bases, 4 platforms, iOS, Android, our web desktop with a backend that feeds all of them, you need at least 4 engineers, and engineers have families and need to feed them. And therefore they need a salary. And so you start to realize there's no way to keep this thing running without capital. Even just keep the lights on. There was like no way to do that. Volley, had tens of thousands of users that needed to be supported, and
server costs.
Were pretty meaty for a video based product like that. So, and there just wasn't time to make a hard pivot at that point.
How many team members did you have? What's your head count?
At the height, we had 12, but then, we started cutting down to like
everyone did
7.
last summer.
at the end there, but whether we cut to 7 or 5, like it didn't matter.
Yeah.
We get a couple more weeks of runway.
Right.
So we essentially ran out of capital, weren't able to raise again, and shut it down April 30th of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, that kind of brings me to a bunch of travel after that. Bunch of revenge travel.
Yeah, we touched base again at an event where we traveled to, what was it, Antimony, Utah.
Yeah.
This crazy little place.
Yeah.
So what does it mean for you now? What's next for you?
Well, I've narrowed it down to either...
Wait, hold on. Before you answer that question, let me interrupt my question by asking you another question.
Okay.
Like, are you tired, or do you feel the need to go do something else?
I feel both.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that I'm tired. Humbled is the right maybe response. Humbled.
Sure.
Heartbroken is probably a better word. Just that I couldn't get that plane to fly, and I feel like I'm one of those that can get anything to fly. And I couldn't get that one to fly, and that's the best product I've ever built with the best team. Dang, that's humbling. So my tail is tucked between my legs a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And here's what I would say in your example. It did fly for a bit.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
It's like it worked until it didn't, and it only didn't work because
the wind shifted.
The model broke, right?
Yeah.
Like, which doesn't seem. So I had Brent Thompson on the show, and we talked about fairness and stuff, but I almost said, it doesn't seem fair. Right. Oh, boy.
And then he went into meritocracy.
Yeah. And then we went into meritocracy. But yeah. So, all right, back into your question then, right? If you're not done, what does it mean for you next?
Yeah. So I've narrowed it down to either building a business, buying a business, or joining a business. One of those three is what I'm going to do, which is pretty much all options. So I've not narrowed it down at all.
Yeah. There you go. There's no
aperture is wide open at this point. I'm spending most of my time in the buy vector just because I feel like it's such a great time to acquire a cash flowing business. Venture's kind of rocky right now. Tech is kind of question mark right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of the build ideas I have are in tech or venture. I mean, there's always pickles, but
hold on. Yeah. So I was going to say pickles.
Okay.
So for those that don't know, do your research. Josh makes the most excellent pickles ever. Has his own stickers, jars, everything. It's legit. Mm-hmm. And they're so freaking good. So we're hoping that he starts a pickle company maybe one day.
Yeah. I would love to. It's just really hard to look at a pickle company P&L after you've been staring at a software company P&L for 15 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It's it's just demoralizing. Like, what? We've got to sell how many million jars to get to a place where we could afford 2 salaries or what? No way. It's just a grindy, capital intensive business. But a business like that will almost 100% work. That's one that's like a pretty sure bet, but
it's a great product.
It's a great product.
You know for sure. You've been testing it for years.
I have. Yeah. It would be a long road. And that's the difference between tech. You can build the best product and it still just doesn't catch favor, isn't the right time, didn't get the right distribution, whatever reason, it doesn't work. And, the App Store is just littered with these types of products, in the web. Pickles or RV parks or who knows what it is, but I am looking at product companies right now, looking to buy a product company that builds a best in category product that is a premium product. It's the clear best product in a category, but may not be the best selling or best marketed product.
So where can people reach you if they want to learn more or talk with you?
You can just find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
It's probably the best place.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on. It's a very cool story, and I hope there's more pickles involved in the future. I don't know, software that can come and go, but pickles, I hope they stay. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep making pickles as a hipster side hustle for sure.
That's awesome. Thanks, Josh.
You bet, man.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of No Instructions. Feel free to leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe so we can continue producing these podcasts. Today's episode was brought to you by Distro. Distro is a platform to help startups find, hire, and pay employees in over 200 countries. It's free to use. Go to distro.io to set up your free account today.